Heath here from pickinglessons.com, Banks of the Ohio. This is such a great song. We're in the key of G in this mandolin lesson, and this is part of the Beginner Crash Course at pickinglessons.com. This is lesson number 11. First 10 lessons we've covered from the beginning, some very basic things to get you going, working through up to some more techniques that are going to start to push you along. And this lesson, number 11 here, we're looking at two new techniques, and this is about this great arrangement for the song, but also about cross-picking and slides. So we're introducing the slide technique, a new technique, and we're cross-picking as well, which is another new technique. There are some other things in here, like some cool little bluegrass style licks that are a bonus, some double stops that are a bonus. We're not really gonna break those down as such. What we're gonna focus on is the cross-picking and the slide technique while we learn this arrangement in G. In a moment, we're going to break down the first 4 measures of our arrangement here. And in these 4 measures, we get to look at the slide technique initially and some cross-picking. And we're going to have a look at those techniques and we'll break them down here. Now, if you head to pickinglessons.com, you can grab yourself the arrangement. So the tablets are there in the member section where we'll continue this lesson, of course, and we'll break down the technique further, looking at the cross-picking patterns we're using, looking at some more slides and some variation on the slide technique within the arrangement. You also have play along and backing tracks there once you get to know it, plus access to all the other lessons in the crash course and on the website as well. Now, let's jump into here though, these first 4 bars of the arrangement. And doing this, we're going to get started with these 2 techniques we're going to focus on. So up first is going to be the slide. So let's have a listen. I might just play this first 4 bars so we know what we're going to deal with. So we've got these pickup notes leading us into the first measure. And we'll pick it up to that point there where we're about to hit into the next chord change. The first thing we're going to have with these pickup notes, they're just all on the quarter notes, they're all on the beat. So downstrokes picking is going to follow our general structure we've already spoke about in practice. So down on the beat, so a quarter note, and down up when we have the 8th notes together. So these 3 pickup notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, all downstrokes. Now, measure 1, we have this slide. Let's work on that very first note. Now, what we need to do for this particular style of slide is we're firstly moving from fret 1 into fret 2 with our first finger. But this is what we call a grace note slide. So it happens very quickly. As we place our finger on first fret and we pick that note, we slide just after we pick it, landing on fret 2, which is the fundamental pitch that we want to hear. So the slide is there, the first fret is not really noticeable, but it is because it's part of the movement. But we're moving just after we pick. It's just a very quick movement after we pick the first fret. So we're not spending any time on that first fret at all. So I'm not holding that note and then moving across. I pick that and move straight in, and that's how we want to approach this quicker grace note slide. And notice in the tablature it's a smaller number 1 that represents the grace note. In the notation it's a different style of note as well, you'll see there. So that quick slide, so make sure you don't slide before you pick because you won't hear anything. Make sure you don't slide too late, otherwise we give too much weight to the first fret. We don't want that. We want that quick movement just after we pick the string. So there's our grace note slide. That's the first one. One of the things you need to work on while we play that technique, if you're not familiar with the slide really, is to keep the pressure in there and kind of push into the string as we move across. But spend some time doing that, just the first finger there. Just get used to moving across and making sure we still hear that second fret ringing true as we move on through. If you don't, perhaps your pressure isn't quite firm enough. So make sure you're holding that note down. We'll come back and practice that in a moment. Now, straight up, we're into the cross-picking technique. Now, cross-picking essentially is when we're playing repetitive style patterns over 2 or more strings from a chord. There can be movement within that as well. You can have different melody notes sort of moving through, but pretty much typically you're going to be holding some form of chord. And on the mandolin, it's really common to play double stops. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time on double stops here, but we will be needing them, and later on we'll dive more into some double stops. What we might do is just firstly make sure our fingers are in the right position. So 3rd finger and our 1st finger there. So 3rd finger on that 5th fret. Make sure you've got some clearance underneath so we can hear the 1st finger there on the 2nd fret. Make sure you've got a nice clear sound, but if you've been working on some chop chords and that sort of thing, you'll find this not too bad, just the 2-note double stop. Now we've got our third finger there, first finger. And if we look at that second beat on the first measure all the way through to the second beat on the second measure, that's what we can practice initially. And so this type of cross-picking pattern is great. One of my favorite mandolin players that I've listened to an awful lot, Herschel Sizemore, if you listen to his playing, there's an awful lot of, well, he calls it a bounce in his playing, yeah? And it's just cross-picking, so you get that kind of style of, rather than just perhaps a tremolo, you've got this bounce between the notes, which is what we're cross-picking here. And so that's really cool. Herschel Sizemore, check him out if you're not familiar. But we're holding these 2 notes here, third finger, first finger, and if we look at the first part of the pattern, we've got quarter note, 8th note, 8th note. Yeah, let's just do those 3 beats. So from second beat in first measure, ready, and 2, 3, and 4, and. Notice the right hand, down, down, up, following our rhythmic structure. So down on the quarter note, down and up on the 8ths, down, down, up, down, up. Let's continue on this pattern here. So the next note is a down on the quarter and then a down up on the 2/8 there, crossing over the string. So we're just following that movement. Let's go from the second beat there through to the next measure, second beat as well. Ready, and. Yeah, one more time. Ready, and. So that's the beginning of what we're looking at for this cross picking, and these patterns are great. So when you can apply these to chords, you can hold any 2 notes. So you might play a C chord. You might play part of a different G chord. Yeah, so you can do all sorts of variations on these. You might play part of a D chord, just open. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. Let's move on. Let's pick it up from where we play the 4th and 5th frets there. They're just passing notes to get up to the next melody note. Let's put all of this so far together from the pickup note. 1, 2, 3, 4, slide, cross picking. Passing notes. Okay, stop, prop, have a practice of that, but let's move on. Measure 3. We've got this slide technique again, so it's another grace note slide. This time we're sliding in from that 3rd fret into the 4th. We are using the blue note. So the blue note was the 1st fret into the 2nd, and then the 3rd fret is a blue note into that 4th fret too. So blue note is a note outside the scale, outside the key signature. We hear it a lot in lots of different styles of music, certainly bluegrass. We won't dive much further than that, but it is a blue note. But the slide, fret 3 to fret 4. 1, 2. So just after we pick it, we're sliding into fret 4. 1, 2. We're going to stay there with that second finger and we're going to start to cross pick. Yeah, so our chord that we're using is the F sharp and the A from the D chord, and we're just filling space. So the other point of this cross picking, and if you're playing tremolo over chords and whatnot, is that you can use it to fill space where there is no melody. So the melody is pretty much the F sharp, and now we're just filling time for the rest of the measure using the cross picking technique. So let's try that 3rd bar along. Ready, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and one more time. Into measure 4, we get to maintain that position for our chord, and measure 4 is 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Melody note comes in there on the end. We'll maintain our chord position. That's going to help us as we follow through to the next measure. So 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So you can play these cross-picking patterns in any way that fits around what the melody is doing and vary the rhythmic structure between the 2 strings that we're using. So we're using 2 strings for this cross-picking style of playing. And so we can kind of mix that up in any different way that we like. So certainly work on these little exercises and get familiar with that idea. Let's just finish off with a slow playthrough of these 4 bars with the pickup, and then we'll wrap up this portion of the lesson. So from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, into that 4th measure there. So So work on the cross picking technique, work on that slide, keeping it clean as you move across. Pickinglessons.com. You can grab the tablature there to continue on for yourself. But in the member section, we will break down the remainder of this arrangement and we'll keep working on these techniques so we have some more variation for the cross picking. There's a variation on the slide for the timing, the rhythm of the slide. And later on, the arrangement kind of wraps up at the end with some cool little bluegrass style licks, which are really nice to start to collect as well. So pickinglessons.com, I'll see you there.